Hi, my name's Charles, and when I was 13, I was diagnosed with papillary thyroid cancer. When my parents first gave me the news at our kitchen table, I can still remember my first two thoughts. The first, will somebody please explain to me what a thyroid is? And the second, what do we do now? Over the 8 years since, I've been called a cancer survivor, a Make-A-Wish kid, a childhood cancer courageous kid. But to me, none of these titles have felt like they fit. They just don't feel like they describe me. So when I was first diagnosed, I chose to keep it a secret. I didn't tell anybody because I couldn't process it. Cancer was like a secret society, and I was a die-hard member until Relay for Life at the end of my 8th grade year. For those who don't know, Relay is a charity walkathon event that fundraises for cancer research and treatment. And after a long day of walking laps, eating copious amounts of popsicles, playing soccer, I chose to leave the comfort of my secret society and share my diagnosis with my friends and with my teachers. At the end of the event, Relay puts on a slideshow of cancer survivors to remind everybody who we fundraise for. And this year, I was one of them. Now, at this point, I still had not told any of my close friends who cared about me about my diagnosis, and in hindsight, a small warning might have been courteous. But regardless, the moment came, and I remember the image in almost a comical light. I'm sitting here, crisscross applesauce in the grass, and up on the slideshow screen is this little 4'10" 8th grader with his cute bow tie and big wide grin, and the words, "Cancer Survivor." Everyone I knew just found out at the exact same time. And all I can remember from the rest of that night are countless hugs, tears, and the overwhelming perception of oppressive pity. I suddenly felt that my entire identity had become that of a cancer patient, and that was all that anybody could ever see in me. As a high schooler with cancer, I was in a bit of a tailspin. I was a hormonal adolescent who had yet to hit his growth spurt, and arguably still hasn't. I'm 5'10" in a family of 6'2" Germans. And I was already grumpy about that. Cancer did not help. I felt like I had lost my autonomy, and I was out of control of my own body. Enter Ask Childhood Cancer Foundation and their Moving Forward program, which paired pediatric cancer patients with a personal trainer at the YMCA for free for a year. Soon, I would be buff and short and grumpy. But Ask wasn't only for gains. Ask was also full of kids that I could relate to. I met a friend named Olivia who had the exact same surgery as me, involving the complete removal of both of our thyroids. We just don't have the organ anymore. And so she texted me one day, completely out of the blue, zero context, only 2 texts. "Dude, where's my thyroid?" I don't know. I like to imagine in thyroid heaven somewhere. Olivia didn't pity me because Olivia also had thyroid cancer. I felt safer in community, and for the first time in my life, I started speaking about my diagnosis. Through Ask, I spoke at fundraisers, campaigned on social media for their programs, lobbied for pediatric cancer funding with my mom at the Virginia General Assembly. I never went any deeper than to share I have cancer, but I allowed myself to publicly wear the title of a cancer survivor in the name of a cause that was important to me. I liked being able to use my story to benefit other kids like me, but I was quickly confronted with a single glaring issue. I was dissatisfied with my own story. I felt like a side character in a story about cancer. The term cancer survivor is supposed to be something empowering, but for me, I felt reduced to nothing more than a diagnosis. I wanted to be more than just a cancer story. 3 years ago, I set off to UVA, determined to write a Charles story. I joined clubs, I founded a club, I became a powerlifter and a coach. But more important to me than any of these is when I became a Camp Kesem counselor. Camp Kesem is a free summer camp for kids whose parents have cancer, completely student-run, organized, and funded here at UVA. For me, the mission was personal. Because in my story, while the cancer survivor was supported through treatment, there was an 8-year-old little brother trying to process the diagnosis at the exact same time. And who can expect an 8-year-old to understand that his brother both has cancer and is going to be okay? These are just incompatible thoughts in the mind of a child. So I became a camp counselor to a cabin of 8 to 10-year-old boys who were a joy and a nightmare all at the same time. At Kesem, we exclusively go by camp nicknames, so to me, they were Sheep and Cray Cray and Cheeky Monkey, and to them, I was Snap. And on the third day of camp, my kids were tasked with drawing on a paper plate a picture that makes them think about Camp Kesem. Sheep drew Spider-Man. Cray Cray drew Carl, our caterpillar mascot, jumping off a diving board into the pool. And Spidey, a camper I've grown very close with in my 3 years with Camp Kesem, drew the exact scene of his mother telling him that his dad had passed away from multiple myeloma. The image is scarred into my brain. Brown marker, Spidey's mom sitting at the kitchen table, head in her hands. Spidey still has his backpack on as he's just getting home from school, not knowing the news he's about to receive. His sister's already upstairs in her room crying. When Spidey shared his picture, it broke me. It broke me because Spidey remembers every single detail of that moment, in the same way that I remember every single detail of my diagnosis. I remember my walk down the stairs. I remember exactly where my dad was sitting and where my mom was sitting, and I remember the exact chair that I pulled out, not knowing that my life was about to irreparably change. I remember my feeling of shock, and I can only imagine Spidey's. To this point, I had only ever used my cancer diagnosis as a title, cancer survivor. At Kesem, my cancer experience enabled me to empathize deeply with my kids. Empathy is heartbreak. It is heartbreaking to hear my own pain reflected back at me because it's pain that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And I quickly realized that my empathy gave me the motivation and the passion to make an impact on these kids. But they didn't need a cancer story. They just needed me, as I was. I see my story in a different light now. I used to see only the impact that cancer has had on me. But now, I see the gifts that I have gained from my cancer experience. Empathy, a motivation to help, an appreciation for life. My story, the Charles story, will be the way that I use these gifts to impact the people around me. A little over a month ago, I was asked to stand in front of all of you and tell a story, and I'll be honest, I immediately asked myself, are we going to tell them a cancer story? No. I hope you won't walk out of here tonight thinking that you heard a cancer story, because that's not my story. I don't want you to call me a cancer survivor, even if I'm proud to be one. I just want you to call me Charles, a Camp Kesem director, a powerlifter, a student, a son, a brother, a cousin, a storyteller. Thank you.